Nothing moves in this world without selling. Sales is everywhere.
All right. Hey guys, so welcome to another episode of the Practical Wealth Show. So today I'm joined by a true master of sales and profit, Doug C. Brown. Doug's the CEO of CEO Sales Strategies and Sales Revenue, and he's a profit growth expert, and he's helped companies like Intuit, CBS, Procter Gamble, Enterprise, Chet, Holmes, and these companies grew by 864% in 6 months. So when we say high performance, we mean it. Okay. So now he teaches companies and individuals how to scale their sales the same way, using strategies used by the top 1% performers. And he helps organizations build elite commission-only sales team that win. He's a proud dad, a former Berklee musician, and someone who doesn't back down from competition, whether it's on the ice or in the boardroom. Doug, welcome to the show.
Hey, Curtis, thanks for having me here. I'm so grateful to be here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I'm excited to have you on. Business sales is one of my favorite topics because, it's a skill, and if you want to make more money, you got to improve your skills. If you want to make more money in business, you got to improve your skills. But one of the things I liked about this, we were talking before we went online, is I realized the NBA was this. People listening heard the story, but wasn't look for NBA to level 5'11" shooting guards, right? But what I liked about sports is that you could work and make yourself better. Like one of my favorite, I like watching all these Kobe videos of how he worked hard and made himself better. And so I'll send them out to some of the salespeople on our team. I was like, listen, this doesn't take talent. It takes ability, and abilities can be learned, right? And so otherwise you wouldn't have a business. So you can learn this stuff, and there are best practices, but you just have to decide that, hey, I want to be good. I think that's the only thing I found is that if you won't be beat, you can't be beat. And so, Doug, let's start with your origin story. What drew you into this world of sales, and how did it evolve into building a high-performance sales team and advising global brands? I know that's a big thing I just asked you, but.
Yeah, I clearly remember the moment. And I've been on podcasts and people were asking me that question. I'm like, when did I really get that? Right. So, all my brothers and I worked for my dad when we were young. My dad had an industrial machinery, electric motor business. And at age 3, I was sweeping floors, loved it. Got to go out with the adults to the bar, have my Coca-Cola, and they drank their beer. I heard my mother was not very happy about that, but we got exposed early. But right around almost maybe age 6, 5.5 to age 6, we would start to be put out in front of the clientele to help write orders. And I can only imagine what my penmanship looked like back then. But it was a family-run business. There were 14 people in the company, and I remember one day I was probably maybe 7. I remember I was getting 25 cents an hour. I just wrote something up that I sold a part that we paid $10 for, but I sold it for 20.
Okay.
And in my head, it went, wait a minute, I'm making $10 a week, doing 40 hours a week. And I just sold this part in like 6 minutes and we made $10. Something doesn't compute, that type of thing. And then as I started pondering on that, I realized, okay, I could actually make money selling things far more than I can make on an hourly wage. So we call that leverage, right? And back then I didn't even know what the word meant.
Right.
And so I started doing those things. I went to my brothers who were way older than I was, and I said, hey, you can get a paper route. I can't because I'm not old enough. Why don't you go get the paper routes? I'll get the people to get around and sell these papers door to door.
Right.
And I'll pay you a commission as an investor. I didn't even know what that meant back then. And I will run this team. And so I did. That was my first commission sales team.
How old were you?
I think I was 7 or 8, somewhere
Wow,
around
that's
there.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And so, you got the vig off the
Right.
team, if you will, right? And so, that's where I started learning this process. And I was like, okay, well, if I could do this here, I'm sure I can do this in another business, And I had a lot of businesses that didn't work, and I had many that did. And that's just the way life works in business, right? So, but then as I started getting older, I started working with other companies. And as I started working with other companies, I just applied the same principles to sales, which is, I loved what you said. It's, talent and ability, right? So it's not talent, it is ability. And I can concur on that, because I've trained people who have no sales experience whatsoever, and they become top producers in their companies. And people always say, well, geez, yeah, but I'm an engineer, or I'm an accountant. Well, I've trained accountants who are like, just blaze the trail. It's crazy, because they understand the financial numbers as well. So that part is very helpful to businesses. So it is something that, that's how it started. And then as I was going along, one day I helped a company called Coach University. I was selling telecommunications at that point. And they said, Doug, you should be a coach. And I said to him, well, I tried to play some semi-professional soccer. And they said, no, 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 not that kind of coach. I didn't even know what they were talking about, to be honest with you, Curtis. So that's what led me toward the Chet Holmes thing. I ended up helping a guy named J. Conrad Levinson, who wrote a book series called Guerrilla Marketing. He introduced me to Chet. I became their #1 producing coach right out of the gate. In the first 4 months, I was selling $65,000 a month in coaching. They were trying to figure out what was wrong with me, because I was selling so much more, or what was right in coaching. Yeah.
No, of their coaching.
Of their coaching. Yeah. So we were selling the coaching and delivering it, and we were getting 50%. So, so people listening, does sales work for you? Here I am making whatever that was, 32.5 a month in my fourth month on, selling coaching and delivering it. And so, eventually that led to me becoming the president of training and sales in that company. And eventually Tony Robbins bought into that company. So for 7 years, I was their president of training and sales, and all these things just started happening. And
I remember those ads.
Yeah, on the radio.
Chet Holmes and Tony Robbins. I remember hearing those. And so they came to you, or you ran all that stuff when the leads came in.
Yeah. So eventually there was a gentleman, Mitch Russo, and we basically were running the company. So some of those ads you heard, I actually wrote, and some of those ads that, Mitch wrote, and Chet wrote them too early on. Eventually Chet passed away, so we were still running the company after he passed away.
Yeah.
But and I ran all of that, like from the radio ads to the budgets to the sales team to the presenters team, helping the consulting team, coaching team, all of that I was involved in.
So all right, so people that know me know sometimes this is free consulting for Curtis when I do a podcast. But so in developing, because I'm dealing with this now, sales teams, did you start from, because one of the things I heard in what you said, if you interview, who said this? Was it, I heard this guy say, when you interview people, you got to look for the thread of success in their fabric of life, right? Mm-hmm. So you started at 3, 6, 7 doing stuff. So winners win. So if you do that, you're going to continue to do that. So if you start from hiring people, do you find that those are the traits of successful people that have really won with what you're teaching? Or even then you can still take a person with no background and still follow, your strategy and teach them?
You can do both, right? So the person who's had that success thread of life, so to speak, as long as they have the desire and commitment at this point in their life, that's the key, right?
Yeah.
So, not to beat up on professional athletes, but I had a friend who, used to teach them, they'd come out of professional being an athlete, try to go into business and fail miserably.
Yeah.
Right? So you can have all the talent and everything, but if you don't learn the skill sets of the business of the business, especially, and how to sell,
right,
then no matter what kind of talent you have, you're not going to succeed. So when you look at the success threads of life, if they have that, like, hey, they played football or they played basketball, or, they were a wrestler, or they were a black belt now, or a multiple black belt, that's a good sign, because those are people who are competitive and want to actually grow, and that type of, and they also have discipline to be able to get there.
Yeah.
This is the big part of it. Yeah. That's the big part.
But some of them, I'm not going to bash on them either.
No, go ahead.
They're soft. Like, they don't have the work ethic, for other stuff outside of, I'm going to shoot 500 shots a day. And some of them won't even do that, in terms of how to get better. And so I was just okay. So I really had to bust my butt to stay on there. So I just kind of mentally transferred that into, okay, I got to get my reps. I got to do it. So, I used to coach soccer and girls soccer and basketball. So listen, I tell the parents, you have to have a will to prepare to win. Everybody wants to win on Sunday or Saturday on a track meet, but it's what you do during the week to get ready, or what you do during the summer to get better. So how did you, what were I'm shifting now, because I want to talk to you. I didn't hear me enough. What are the key levers let's say with the Tony Robbins, Chet Holmes, with the 800+% growth, can you think of any key levers you pulled to make that explosive growth happen?
Yes. Yeah. Because, people always say sales is a numbers game, right? It's really not. But that's what people think. Like, if I just do enough activity and I'll do this and I'll do that, that's just like straight line growth.
Okay.
I look for leveraged growth. So I look for optimization. And this is what I teach people. So, like, if you say, not you, but if one says, if I ask them, what do you want to have happen in a sales call? Then majority answer will be, I want to make a sale.
Right.
Then I go, well, what happens if you don't make the sale? They go, well, I hang up. That's linear, right? That's just straight line. How about if you don't make a sale, you get 3 referrals? How about if you don't make a sale, you build a relationship? How about if you don't make a sale, you get a testimonial? They're like, I can get a testimonial if someone says no. Yes, you can get an endorsement on your character. You can get all these things. So how do you gain growth out of every single little piece of something that you're doing? And so what happened with the 860, +%, we had a lot of wins there. I grew one product set by over 4,150%. So what I did is I look at the metrics. I look at the metrics in between so people will call these KPIs, like keep right? Mm-hmm. So I look at these, what are we trying to accomplish? And what are the metrics and sub-metrics that form all along the client chain, the buying process?
Right.
You look at those metrics and you measure the ratios. And that's what I did. And when you measure the ratios, they tell you something's up, maybe a story. And so I'll give you a couple of examples. Chet was always telling me, Doug, we're running like 24% in the red, on the radio ads that we were generating on the front end that you're familiar with. So for those who don't know, we would advertise on Sirius satellite, XM radio, super, super expensive to do that. And then we would drive them to a phone call, to a queue, sell them a $229 2.5-hour training, from the 2.5-hour training into a $4,000 plus training program.
Right. And
so 24% loss on the front end. And so I was like, the training is amazing. It's awesome. It really was. And so I was like, and so I started measuring the ratios. And one of the ratios I looked at was, and I found they had a high refund rate. They had almost a 16% refund rate on the training. And I'm like, why in the world would anyone want to refund on this training? So I listened to some of the recordings, and then when they were talking about that, they actually were inviting the refund. Here's what would happen. They would say, hey, let's add up our numbers of what we got today. And people would add up their numbers individually. And then the trainer would say, geez, Curtis, what did you get? And you'd say, well, I got $340,000. I found, potentially today. Okay, great. And they would say all of that. And then after that, what they would do is they'd say, okay, guys and gals, if you don't think this training was worth $229 to you, I want you to call 1-800-GET-A-REFUND right now, and we'll give you your money back. If you don't think we exceeded every expectation on the planet, and they pitched that 3 times.
Wow.
And so naturally people are like, well, I can get my money back. Geez, okay. Even
though
they
already learned the stuff. So I get my money back and I got new knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So all I did is went in, and because when you know the story, you can tweak the story.
Yeah.
And this is not just for revenue growth. This is for selling too.
Yeah.
If you're selling, folks, and you lose a deal and you're not asking people why you lost the deal, you're not gaining valuable information. And they will gleefully tell you why they didn't give you the deal and why they went with a competitor. So you can adjust. So in this case, all I did is I looked at that and I said, guys and gals on the presenter team, let's not say this. Let's add up all the things that we did individually. I want you to calculate everything that you wrote that they said. So if Curtis said 345,000, someone said $1 million, and so on and so on, add them all up and then celebrate it. So that's what we used to do. We'd go around the room. They'd say, 10, 12, 15, 20 people. We'd add them all up. We go, hey, everybody, we got $143,246,712 on this call. And then we took it from Tony Robbins. Everybody go, woohoo. And they would all go, woohoo. And then we asked this one question. I think we deserved our fee today. What do you think? And everybody would go, yes. And then refund completely went away within 2 days.
That's it. See, that's not, don't give back money. That's awesome. I mean, one of the things, so let me break this down, because I work with like realtors and insurance agents and mortgage people. So people that are in, I guess, B2C, and I know B2B sales, but people are people. So it's the same really. But what I heard was, one, and I tell people this, the numbers tell a story, right? And you're not, really breaking down, because it's really a business of language and perception.
Yes.
Right. And then I was talking to one of my guys. I was like, all right, how many did you talk to last week? So they don't want accountability, but accountability is critical. I said, well, I said, when you say talk to, what do you mean? Right. Because what I mean is you sat down with somebody or you were on a Zoom and you gave them the talk. How many of those did you do last week? 3. What was the result? And I'm breaking it down. I said, so, I can tell you why you're not working, but if you don't look at it, because I want people to know, listen, if it didn't work, I wanted you to understand you're not working, right? You
Correct.
Don't have enough lead generation. You're not effective. If you're, I find that it's very scientific for the people that are out there and they're afraid of sales because they think it's like catch can. You're just out there and, out there in the wind and you don't know what's going to come in or not. But if you get good, like what you're teaching, it can be very predictable. Is that, would you say?
Yeah. I mean, if we just took a basic ratio as you're talking about, right? And we just said 20, 20, 20. Let's just say that's it. I was taught this as XXY, right? So you just put in whatever numbers you want. But let's take 20, 20, 20. And you did 20 reach outs of one way, one in the same day, 20 one way, and then the next 20 another way, just 2 different methods.
Right.
And then you followed up with 20 people. And you just did that every single day. Within weeks, you will never be able to do the first 20, because it'll go more like 10, 5, 50 on the back end. And the moment we do this, what we will see is we're talking to way more people, following up with way more people, being more responsive to people. And just that activity alone, Curtis, based on what your premise, that will if you have a static close rate, let's say of 20%, right? I'm just making numbers up. I'd like to have your close rate higher, but I'm just saying if you just at a 20% close rate and now you're pushing 50% more through on the conversations that you were having before, you will close 20% of those 50% of those calls and conversations that you're having. So your numbers will magically go up. So people are like, well, I don't like math. Look, if you're talking to 20 people a week and you have a 20% close rate, you have a four sales.
Right.
If I can get you to go and talk to 30 people a week consistently, you will now get 6 sales.
Right.
Right. So you can run the metrics and the math on that, and you'll see that you'll increase your sales by 2 a week. So again, 100 sales times whatever number you get for the sale, for your commission, then you can up your numbers just by that, just by a stable prospecting process. Right. Now, imagine we get better on our conversations like you were just talking about. You know, I love what you said, language and perception, right? So if we're better on our conversational skills, and these are learned, folks. Well, actually, you have them all when you're a child, but it's kind of drummed out of you as you grow up, you know?
Right.
Because children
go for an answer, right?
Exactly, right? Any of us have had a 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, right? You know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you work on those conversational skills, work on things like building rapport. If we work on understanding our ideal right fit buyer better, the characteristics, because people buy for a business return on investment, but they also buy for a personal return on investment. And most people miss the personal return on investment. So if we understand those things, how to follow up better, how to shape our mind a little better every single day, because that's a big part of the game. And, you know, just follow some basic rules, your sales will go up. Now, the reason that people don't do this, Curtis, because they have no system for accountability. They have no system for the discipline of that. And frankly, they don't like rejection.
Right.
And this comes along with rejection, but it's just part of the game. But we're rejected every day of our life, right? It's like, you know, you go to Starbucks, I'd like a macchiato, whatever. I'm sorry, we don't have that, you know, that syrup today. We ran out of vanilla. You just been rejected. You don't fling it.
See that way. Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's funny. So I want to apply this to, so I'll see people working it. They don't want to make more money, but they won't. I'll use a person. She don't listen to my show anyway, so I'll use my daughter. And,
dude, you're in trouble if she listens.
But she don't listen. Don't trust me. But what happens? And she's brilliant, right? And so she's in kind of like a music type business. And I'm like, listen, you know, if you get in front of this and learn how to sell something, you could generate the money that you want to make. And so that generations is just against that. And I've always found that everybody needs somebody to sell their stuff. So if you're willing to sell, you really will never, you know, even if it's sell for someone else at a job, I've never gone 3 weeks without finding something, because I always looked at some sell cards or whatever. Sales, as long as I liked it, I could sell it. Am I crazy, or is that especially in this environment, how can we help them change their mindset around that? Is that possible?
Yeah, actually, and I think your daughter should listen to this because of the story I'm about to tell. Okay, so firstly, selling, nothing moves in this world without selling.
Yes.
If you're holding a pencil or a pen right now, someone sold somebody that pencil or pen, and somebody sold the lead in that pen, the pencil, or the ink in that pen to the person who put the pen together or the pencil together and the eraser. And right, these are all separate components. These were all sold. If they were not sold, you would not be holding that in your hand. It just simple as that, right? If you were not sold on the idea of getting a phone or whatever you're listening to on this moment, right, you would not be hearing this, right? So sales is everywhere. Dan Pink wrote a great book, To Sell Is Human. Mm. And the best salespeople in the world are children. Their children are the best salespeople in the world. They ask for what they want. They seek it out. They continue to keep pursuing what they want. Now, some of them push the envelope too far, and that's where you feel, I don't want to be that pushy salesperson. That's what most people feel like. I've been taken by that person before, right? But let's go back to the music business for a second. When I was going through college, or European university, that they would say that, or Canadian, I actually worked and sold music equipment. And the reason I ended up in Berklee College of Music was because I sold music equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I grew up in an environment where good was never going to be good enough. And so all of us have our childhood wounds to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And, I remember sitting at the piano one day when I was 15 and a half, and my mother walking by going, "You're never going to make it as a professional pianist or a musician. Your grandmother was a concert pianist. You just don't have the same stuff." That was the environment I grew up in.
Okay.
So here I am selling music equipment, and people are coming in who I'm making personal friendships with, who are members of Aerosmith, the Eagles,
Wow.
Billy Joel, his band, David Brown, the guitar player, Denny Lane from Paul McCartney and the Wings, Boston, the whole band, Extreme, Jake Isles band, and I could go on and on and on and on. I'm hanging out with Tom Schultz for an afternoon, from Boston, and I'm developing all these relationships in the music business by being in the sales entity of the music business. They invited me to go out to Roland Corporation, which was at the time, a company that started building synthesizers and things like this.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted me to go learn. So I'm out now in LA meeting those musicians out in LA. And I come back to here into Boston. And one day I'm talking to Barry Goodrow, who used to be the guitar player, one of them, for the band Boston. And he said to me, "Doug, you are a really good musician." And I said, "Well, thank you, Barry Goodrow." He goes, "Doug, I think you ought to go to music school and get more immersed in the music business." And I'm like, "But my mother said I'd never make it on the piano," right? And I said, "Well, Barry, where do you think I ought to go?" He goes, "I don't know, just apply to the top ones in Boston, New England Conservatory, Berklee College of Music, just apply." I'm like, "Okay." So I applied to Berklee as my first choice. And I went for the interview, and they went, "Welcome to Berklee College of Music." Now, the Cars, Till Tuesday, and the list goes on, right? And so my point being is, how did that get there? By selling. So selling not only brings you financial rewards, but it brings you relationship capital that you can never get outside of that capital. Because to imagine what it would have cost me if I had no idea how to penetrate into the professional music business on that level. I mean, I worked with a gentleman who was the drummer for a band called Stories, who wrote a song called Louie, 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 right? Right? He was the drummer. And then he worked with Lou Reed, and he introduced me to that, and then the band Kansas, and then so on and so on, right? So
Wayward Son. Yes.
Yeah. Right? So the point I'm trying to make to everybody is nothing moves unless we sell it. And here's the thing. People buy for three reasons. They want something, and they want one of these three things. They have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
They have a goal, or they just found an opportunity they want to capitalize on. Now, we as the selling entity, if we can help them solve that problem, isn't that noble to solve somebody's problem?
Yeah.
Help them solve that problem. They have a goal. They want to get into, I don't know, Berklee College of Music, right? Well, we just help them. They want to, but they couldn't because their family made too much money, and they didn't have enough money to actually go to Berklee College, which is now insanely priced. Berklee, I'm sorry, it's like $58,000 or whatever it is, 54. I don't know what it is. But you can help them through college planning, and you sold them college planning, let's say, because you're in the financial business, and sometimes people use that, right? and you help that person get into Harvard or Berkeley or Stanford or the college of their choice. Isn't that a noble thing to do?
Yeah.
Right. And so this is what the perception of sales is not to most people. To help somebody get into the perfect automobile that is perfect for them, that they can afford and can do, where they just thought they could never do it before, that's noble, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So,
it's a noble thing. Here's a definition that helped me. That I'll try to tell people. I got it from Dan Sullivan, helping people.
yeah, good guy.
Helping people make a future decision that is good for them. Like most people think is trying to talk people into buying something they don't want, don't need, can't afford. And so that's the perception when people hear it, cold calling, knocking on doors. And I don't do any of that.
Yeah.
I've never done that. I've never cold called. I'm chicken. I want to talk to people that want to talk to me. But I got good at getting referrals and getting introduced to offset my introvert, afraid of rejection, Curtis. I would just try to get a lot of influence work for me up front.
Yeah, and we all have that. Like, when think about it, when we were young guys, if we looked across the room and we saw somebody attractive that we wanted to go take to the dance when we were in whatever, 6th grade or whatever, we sheepishly might walk up there, right? And or we might walk up there with total confidence. And like if we look at, when we were in school, especially, like, why is she going out with him? He's an idiot. Like he's a jerk, right? Because he had confidence. And confidence is sexy.
That's
right?
That's
so
right.
But we learn how to build confidence through selling as well. Like I remember the first time, Curtis, I ever sold a $35,000 a month consulting package. I was like talking to this owner, and honestly, I didn't even think I could do this at the time, but I was talking to a business owner and he said, well, what do you think about this? And I said, what do you think, sir? And he said, well, I think your idea is really sound. And we started having that good conversation. And then he said to me, he goes, well, what do you think this is going to cost? And I said, well, it'll be about $35,000 a month for 6 months. And I was like, I had my fingers behind my back crossed, my toes crossed, my eyes were probably crossed in anticipation and hope. And all he did is look across the table and he goes, sounds fair. Let's do it. And I was like, pinch me. What just happened? Right. So, but here's the thing. I got the confidence to be able to do that. And I sold 4 more that year at the same rate. And so now if you're all adding that up, that works out pretty well for most people, right? And so that's what sales will do. If we're willing to walk up to the girl across the room and ask, most of the time they're going to say yes. Some of the time they're going to say no. But most of us didn't go throw ourselves out the 3rd-story window because Mary said no to us, right? It hurt, it stung at the moment, but then we asked someone else and they went out with us. So that is kind of how sales works. And you got to build it in. It's the law of averages. For every ask, every 10 asks, you're going to get a certain amount of no's, a certain amount of yeses. So when it comes to like things like cold calling, if you make that a game or a competition amongst people, it doesn't feel the same as if you're just totally reliant on this. I'm going to live or die by this moment, this moment. Mm-hmm. And so all of this becomes just kind of a game. But if we keep in mind why we're doing the game, to help somebody. And may I tell a story, Curtis, on this?
Please, yeah.
So one time I was on a call. I was at Chet Holmes, and I was on a presentation like we're doing here that we were talking about with the refund rate and things like that. I was training people. And there was one gentleman, I just could feel like he needed to do something. But he was just like, nah, I can't afford the $4,000 for this, and et cetera, blah, blah, blah. Gave me like every reason why not. And I said, hey, do you mind if we stay on after and have a conversation? He's like, sure. And so I literally talked to this gentleman for like 35 minutes. And he threw me everything he could throw me. And I'm like, dude, how long have you been lying to yourself? Like, it was that type of conversation, right? And he finally said to me, fine. you persuaded me, I will do this. And I said, is it something you want to do? He goes, I think it makes sense. I'll do it. And he did it. Right now, I follow people's progress, and I could see he was making some progress. And occasionally I reach out and go, hey, how you doing? But go 1 year later, I'm at a live event, and this guy, his wife, and 2 little kids come up and they hug me and they surround me and they got me like tight and they were holding on to me. And I'm like, hey guys, how are you? Right. And the wife gives me a kiss. I never met her. And the little kids, were holding on to my leg at the time. I go, hey, what's up? He goes, Doug, I didn't tell you something on our call. I said, what? He goes, I didn't tell you that at the time my wife and I were splitting off because I was so stressed out about what everything was going on in the business. I didn't tell you about my business partner and I we were nearly broke, and we were about to file bankruptcy. And I didn't tell you all these things, but you getting me into that program turned everything around for us. And now we're happy, healthy, and the family's together, and I'm not estranged from my children anymore, and all these other things. Man, I was like crying in the hallway after that, right? Because that's what selling can do. And so anybody who's like, oh, it's just trying to sell somebody and get money in your pocket. No. That's bad selling.
All right.
Right? Selling is to help people. And if we can't help people, what's the point of being here in a lot of ways, right? To me.
That I almost want to cry. And I'm but because that's the result of that they're getting, you don't even know that. But if you're convinced that your thing can help them, then you shouldn't have any, reservation about sharing that with them. And so a lot of times people aren't really sold themselves on what they're doing. If you're just doing it for the money, you might as well get out of it, because I don't, money's not enough. It's not enough for the right type of person. It's not enough. It's got to be bigger than that.
I agree. For most people, for longevity purposes, look, sales is a career.
Yeah.
It's no different than I want to be a doctor. I want to be an accountant, whatever. It's a career. And in those careers, you've got to do continuing education credits, right? CEU credits. And so in sales, it's optional. But in my world, it's not optional.
That's correct.
Like, I was listening to your podcasts, by the way, are super, super, super amazingly great podcasts.
Thank you.
I was listening to, I think it was Mr. Moskowitz or something like Moskowitz.
News. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Tim Petruzzi, I think, was another gentleman I was listening to that episode. And I'm listening going, oh my God, this is so sensible, right? Like, why are people not understanding the rules of the money? Well, we were never taught those rules. We were taught the opposite rules, like you were talking. I'm like, damn, I bookmarked it. I'm going back to it. And so here's my point to people. If you're going to be in any profession, why not be the best at that profession that you can be? And that requires you to go do continuing education credits on your own, regardless of whether or not you're mandated to do them. So, like right behind me, I got a few books. One of them is The Law of Success by Napoleon Hill. I will open that up and peruse through that book, right? Because, it talks about confidence. It talks about relationship capital. It talks about these things. So point being is, no matter, the best of the best never stop learning. I think Michael Jordan was always early in the, he'd get there before the game and practice and then, whatever, right? The best of the best will always continue to do that. Going back to the thread of what you said, you look at their life's success of how they've grown through that process. That is a good indicator of whether or not somebody will be a top producer.
It's not horrible. I started at 20, but I was in Amway, right? So How to Win Friends, Influence People, Imagine Thinking Big, Tony Robbins, NLP Sales Course,
Brian
Tracy, Tom Hopkins.
Yep.
All of those people. Like, I don't really, Todd Duncan was one of my favorites at the time. I have Chet Holmes' book, and that's all worn out,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really read many. I now mostly focus on marketing so I can get people to sell to. But you got to have two things: something to say that, in terms of when you get in front of them, and then somebody say it to. So it's like sales and marketing. So it's like bam, bam, 1-2 punch. And I don't. Do you find like the top 1%? What's the difference between how the top performers approach their career? I think it's a career versus everyone else. Is there a difference in the average producer that you've seen?
Yeah, and it's not this big vast difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
The difference between the 1% and the people who are not they are continuously creating leverage in their process, and they are continuously learning. I try to get in rooms, for example, like, I think I'm good at selling. I don't think I'm the greatest salesperson in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If you talk to Jeffrey Gitomer, I mean, I'm friends with Jeff. He'd probably say he was the greatest salesperson. Chet would say he was the greatest salesperson, but Chet wasn't. Chet was he was great at marketing.
Right.
Right. And the person who is the great prospector, the master prospector, will always outsell the master closer.
Yes.
Right.
Sure.
So, but the top 1% are always trying to get better. They realize that they're at that top level. And just like any top level professional athlete, right? Like, I love hockey. So Brad Marchand, I'm sad he got traded from the Boston Bruins to the Florida Panthers and then wins a Stanley Cup. Mm. But when Brad went from Boston this year to the Panthers, he became competitive over again and sharpened his skill. And I don't think they would have won the Stanley Cup without Brad Marchand in that game this year. And why? Because Brad said, you know what, I'm going to sharpen my saw and get back to this and back to that. I suspect that's what I saw in his performance. So if we look at top performers who are over and over and over staying there, like Tiger Woods before he had his fall, right? I mean, he was always out there doing his thing. And so in sales, it's the same thing. I try to get myself in a room with people. I go, man, I feel kind of like I shouldn't be here. Like they're just way at this level, right? And I'm here. And and then I have to remind myself, well, Doug, you've sold $1 billion worth of stuff. So maybe you deserve to be in this room, right? That type of thing. And what I find is you have conversations with those people, they have a slightly different thought process that you can embrace.
Yes.
And that's what it's all about. It's about really kind of getting in there. And I would say it's a game of top performers go and they go, you know what? It's kind of a game of rejection. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to feel a little weird and I'm going to feel like I'm sort of rejected, but you're not being rejected. You're just being, this is how I've made friends with, like, man, I'm going to go have lunch with the gentleman who started Deloitte.
Wow.
Right? Because he was on my podcast and I liked him. And I said, hey, I'd like to keep a relationship. So I just reaching out and talking and we get talking and things. And I'm like, hey, why don't we have lunch? And he's like, sure, I'd love to. And so you build relationships. That gentleman, brilliant man, when it comes to business, I'm sure I can learn some stuff. And that's the third characteristic. They have a quest for never ending knowledge and how to improve upon their situation in their life and how to help more people. You'll also find top performers, most of them want to give back. Where you'll find that the kind of the average of the mid performer, they talk about it, but they actually aren't doing anything about it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So like yesterday, I was just having a conversation with my friend, Dan, who's a very good marketer. And I said, Dan, why don't we start like this, be like free university where we just teach top level stuff and anybody just could come into that process, right? As a way to give back. And so we'll see what happens. But the point being is those are usually the characteristics I see amongst the top, and they always have a thirst to get better.
Yeah.
That's the other thing too, right? And so that part can't be, well, it can be taught, but it can't be initiated and implemented by anybody but the individual.
Right. You have to, like, even when I coach, I have to, here's what I do. Like at least once a quarter, I'm spending money to get on a plane somewhere to get better at my craft. And I find that where people don't do that, or I try to get, all right, here's something at your price point. You got to get to something. You got to get out of your office. You got to get out and get around people. And I always try, to your point, to be the dumbest, brokest person in the room. Right. And because if I'm the smartest, I need a new room. So we got. I know you got a hard stop, so I got like 5 more questions. We have to get you back on if you're willing to come back.
I would love to. I would love to.
Fascinating for me. But tell them, I want you, and as we close out, tell them if they want to follow you or find out what you got going on. Tell them where to go and how they can, because this is you're in real estate, you're in business. How to raise your. We didn't even get to it. How to raise your price margins and stop competing on price. That's why I have to come back because I had other questions. Tell them where to go to find out more about you.
Yeah, you can, like, if you want to reach out to me directly, it's Doug at CEOsalesstrategies.com, both plural on sales and on strategies. LinkedIn's Doug Brown 123. Instagram is Doug C Brown _. My phone number, 832-549-4836. I'm pretty accessible. I have another podcast called the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. I'm at a place where I'm super accessible. Now I have people who answer my phone sometimes, and I have people who look at my email. But I will always respond to you. Mm-hmm. And if you want to know any more about me, just type in Doug C Brown, revenue growth or something like that. I'll be all over the place. Mm-hmm. And, that's conscious. We did that consciously, right? So we still do PR efforts. And, I saw Tom Papa last night as a comedian. And I was thinking about the marketing that he's actually going through right now and all the things he probably went through to get to, who people know who he is. And who's a genius at this is Taylor Swift. I mean, she's a genius. I remember I took my 2 daughters, they were maybe 5 and 6, and Taylor was not really known the way she is now. And I went there and she was capturing social media addresses and different addresses at the event of these people, like type in this at the event. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant.
Money's in the list. Like she that bit. Oh my God.
And this was like before people really knew who she was. She was sort of getting.
Who does that? Kevin Hart does that.
Yeah. Well, that's why he's Kevin Hart, right? In part, right? He's a funny guy and super intelligent.
You're like me. See, when I go to stuff, I see the business behind the business. Like I see all that other stuff. They're capturing names, how much they made on the door. I'm always counting people's money because I'm like, how can I apply this to practical wealth? And
I do the same exact thing. And I'd like to leave people with this one thing, because you and I are very symbiotic on that. Marketing, sales, customer service, especially marketing and sales. Let's take those two. If somebody thinks, well, I'm okay at doing marketing, but I'm not okay at doing sales, guess what? You're doing sales, because sales is in marketing are they're one and the same.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just an extension, and people have like divided these extensions up. And I frankly think that's a challenge, because then marketers think, oh, salespeople don't like this, and salespeople go, well, marketers don't like, it's kind of like, East versus West. Like, why don't we just get together, right? And so it's all one continuous process. Even customer service should be a selling entity. And if you want an experience of that, go to GoDaddy. Man, they are like masters at doing that. GoDaddy.com. So yeah, I think, again, hopefully this inspired people to at least go, you know what, I'll give this a shot. And, reach out to you, reach out to me, whatever is great for them. And, because it's the greatest form of selling. Is the only place I know of, except for investing, where you can literally make a year's income in an hour or a day.
Yes, that's right.
And and I know this because I did it, and I was like, oh my goodness, I made all of this in one day when I first did it. I've done it numerous times now, but the point being is, it's an amazing feeling that you're like, well, I can just take the rest of the year off if I wanted to, which I wouldn't, but I
do that, but I know I'm more like, oh, if I can do this, can I do more? I would get greedy.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened.
I'm competitive. So all right, I did this. Can I get better? Can I do 5 more of these?
Yeah.
This person took almost the rest of the year off. Crazy.
But
So,
it would be a mistake in selling to do that too, because you lose the momentum. But the point being is, if you go for the leverage game, because what you teach people is leverage as well, right? I mean, it's like, how do you leverage for your future and get your money working for your money and not giving it away to the credit card companies or the banks and all the people who are taking our money and making whatever 25% interest on our money or whatever they're making. Right. It's one of those things that selling will give you that ability to have the extra money that you never even thought of having. So you can invest that extra part and you can build that up. And if you think about it, even the term you mentioned, real estate, like I always have been teaching my daughters from the early on, I'm like, buy one house per year, just one a year for the next 30 years of your life. You'll have 30 homes or 30 commercial buildings or whatever. And then, over time, they'll all get paid off. And let's say at today's thing, you're netting $3,000 a building right now, but over 30 years, you're now getting $90,000 a month. I think you can live fine on $90,000 a month without having to do anything, right? That's including property management fees and all this other stuff, right? So the point being is that go rich dad, poor dad, right? Go from earned income to recurring income, and you'll gain the leverage back in your life. If you can make more earned income, you can put more into the recurring side of the business, the investment side of the business, become the investor in that process. And I love what you're teaching, Curtis.
That's why you got to sell, because you need to earn money. You have to be more productive. Mm-hmm. So you can save more, and then you have more capital to buy or build assets that generate more cash flow. But it starts with earned income in production. Yeah. And so you got to learn to be more productive, not just wait for cost of living raises. So, Doug, I'm gonna let you go because we can talk another hour.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, guys. Go reach out if you're looking at that. I don't care if you're in real estate, you just started network marketing. You got to sell. It's a sales business. You've been married. You're married. You sold. All right. So it's all sales. So.
You definitely sold if you're married.
Yeah, exactly. Right. All right, go. Y'all guys be well. Doug, I'm going to reach back out. We're going to do this again. Thank you so much.
All right, Garth. Thanks, buddy. Bye.